Hello, my name is Dawson and I'm determined to do my bit to stop the mad destruction of our economy and lifestyle which will result from the Green Labor Party alliance in the Senate. This Victorian Senate campaign launch is coming to you through YouTube, as the mainstream media, with the honourable exceptions of 3RRR, Melbourne Talk Radio, is composed of journalists who have decided that we are mad and therefore you shouldn't hear this message. I want you to be the judge. These journalists have decided that your personal bullshit detector should not be exposed to the huge costs of green policies and that you should not hear that all this expense and loss of lifestyle is for nothing, with no benefit to the people or the environment for that matter. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who observed that you could fool some of the people some of the time, and you can fool all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the time. Just a little background on myself. In addition to farming, forestry, education and training and retail experience, I have extensive engineering and hydrogeology experience at a senior level in the energy, water and environment sectors, with a number of qualifications including a master's degree from the Faculty of Engineering at Swinburne. I have a broad expertise across engineering, business and education, and have been involved with so-called carbon trading and tax issues in energy and water projects going back some 20 years or so. Do you know that the great green climate alarmist policies will literally drive our economy backwards and therefore weaken and ultimately destroy our current Australian civilisation as we know it? Some estimates put the initial cost to us of this destruction of our Australian way of life and our Australian economy as high as $5,000 per person per year. We'll pay to watch Australia's economic and political demise. We will pay much more to get much less. Based on the science, the Climate Sceptics Party understand that climate change is mainly natural, and efforts to dramatically reduce carbon dioxide emissions in the end as a transfer of trillions of dollars from the poor and middle classes to the elite in big government, big unions and big business. We see these green climate policies as offering a more miserable existence for humanity generally than would otherwise be the case. And all of this is to be done without any measurable impact on the planet. The Greens candidate for Victoria, Richard Di Natale, recently said to me on 3RRR that talking to the Climate Sceptics Party was like talking to the Anti-Gravity Party. I hope he's ready for the ride. The Climate Sceptics Party is often seen as a single issue party. Well, I suppose if our desire to save and maintain our constitution and develop our strong, innovative and vibrant economy to help us face whatever lies ahead is a single issue, then we are a single issue party. And I guess if our determination to have the science of global warming discussed in open forum under a Royal Commission is a single issue, then we are guilty of running a single issue campaign. And similarly, I dare say if our desire to restore credence to the scientific method in particular, and to restore the good reputation of science in general is a single issue, then so be it. The issue of human-induced global warming and what is proposed to stop global warming, if it is a single issue, is a hell of a big one. It is definitely the unacknowledged elephant in the room and the mother of all single issues, hence our scepticism. If elected, the Climate Sceptics Party brings to the Senate an understanding of the sceptical scientific method and appropriate due diligence controls to public policy, formulation, implementation and processes. There are clearly lacking in the Parliament at present these things. We've had the mining tax, building education rorts, pink bats fiasco, cash for clunkers, national broadband network and so on, all without any real due diligence. Politicians have been buying votes from the devil without seeing the need for detail. This must end. We will oppose the willful destruction of the Australian economy by green policies and won't allow this destruction that we must do. Our economy performs a vital function in the life of Australians and we destroy it at our peril. The Australian economy must be as strong as possible so as to offer all Australians the opportunity to pursue happiness and to address the major challenges as global financial instability, war, and climate change, whether natural or human. To knowingly weaken or destroy the very socio-economic system capable of engineering solutions, as the Greens are doing, is dangerously irrational at best and conscious national suicide at worst. The mainstream media, in the form of newspapers, television and radio, is losing relevance because journalists are preaching a faith rather than asking questions and investigating and documenting the news flow. Before we commit to national economic suicide, we are proposing this time we bring a disaster such as the Black Saturday bushfires upon ourselves again to do a proper due diligence first. We propose a Royal Commission into two related investigations. First, the actual costs of radically rearranging our economy to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions as proposed. Is it $5,000 per person per annum or more? And second, on the relative impact of natural climate change versus man-made global warming. In other words, what are the costs and what are the benefits of action versus inaction? There are some schools of thought led by people such as Bjorn Lomborg who, for the sake of argument, assume man-made global warming is happening. Under this assumption, they have calculated that it is still more prudent to keep an economy strong using low-cost energy so as to be capable of adapting successfully to any and all climate changes, hot or cold. Do you know that the intent of green policies in Australia is to totally abandon the use of reliable and abundant low-cost fossil fuels? This is to be done in favour of expensive and subsidised and so far unreliable and wind-powered electricity supplies. There is a paradox, of course. Any attempt to completely rearrange our entire social, economic and political system in Australia in such a dramatic and damaging way actually requires more energy, not less, more carbon dioxide emissions, more transfers from the average working families of Australia to the wealthy of developing countries, more regulation and control of our energy consumption, more energy intensive jobs transferred overseas, more authoritarian policies and more centralised socialist government and less Australian sovereignty. More power ceded to even more remote and unaccountable United Nations bureaucrats, more remote even than Canberra. And of course more dollars, far more dollars per Australian citizen just to survive. Some estimates put the initial cost as high as $5,000 per year in the next few years of this madness under the green spell. Now I can say, if we Australians were convinced that this global warming story is the greatest moral, economic and environmental challenge of our lifetime, and if we were convinced that human carbon dioxide emissions are the major cause of runaway, dangerous and irreversible global warming, and if we are convinced that very costly carbon tax or emissions trading systems will do anything to reduce carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere, and that our children will benefit from this in the future, and so, by the way, we should therefore force them to accept the life of the Amish, but of course without fire. And supposing we also reject the legacy and sacrifice of our parents and of their parents in what they built here in Australia, in the form of our modern, Western, democratic, industrial society and lifestyle. And if we were to further convince that this will actually stop runaway, dangerous and irreversible global warming, then I suppose, if convinced, I certainly, and I'm sure most Australians, would accept these sacrifices, but only if we can see and trust the scientific evidence. However, as I have seen the state of the evidence so far, having read most of the science and the UNIPCC documents, I can say that I am not yet convinced, and I know I'm not alone. Many of us have doubts. How many times over the last 20 years have the faulty cry of wolf, climate wolf, gone up about such things as temperature rises of 4 to 6 degrees, islands being flooded, storms getting worse, only to return a year or so later with even more dire predictions, unless, of course, we all repent and pay higher taxes. We smell a rat, all of us do. Something isn't right. Things don't quite add up. Whenever alarmists are asked to nominate the particular piece of empirical science which convinced them that humans are the main cause of runaway, dangerous and irreversible global warming, they can't or won't answer. Why not? Both Clive Hamilton, the Greens candidate for Higgins in the recent by-election, and Richard Di Natale, number one for the Greens Senate ticket in Victoria, have refused to reveal to me the empirical science which convinced them personally. We have well-known politicians and international alarmists buying up prime beachside real estate. Why would they do that if the seaside beach is going to be flooded with rising sea levels? We have world leaders burning copious amounts of fuel and electricity, globe-trotting from one high carbon footprint mansion to another, preaching, "Do as I say and not as I do," and making a fortune in the process. We have Al Gore's little horror movie documentary suggesting that rapidly increasing atmospheric carbon dioxide emissions will lead to rapidly accelerating and dangerous global warming. And yet, we now have the four high priests of the Green faith, Michael Mann, James Hansen, Tim Flannery and Phil Jones, admitting that the Earth stopped warming a decade ago and is perhaps now cooling a little. And we've had recorded in historical and geological record a Minoan warm period, a Roman warm period, a medieval warm period, each as warm or warmer than our current modern warm period. And during the 20th century we've had three warm periods of similar degree with concurrent Arctic ice cover reducing and the opening of the Northwest Passages 3 times last century. It's a sad fact, but 99% of parliamentarians and 99% of journalists are scientifically illiterate. Does this explain how things got this far without proper due diligence? I don't know. Ask any politician or journalist, or scientist for that matter, which piece of empirical science convinced them that human carbon dioxide emissions are the main cause of any dangerous, runaway, irreversible global warming, and they'll give you a blank stare. And or they'll get angry. They don't do any due diligence. They put everything on faith. What we say is that we've had natural climate change since the Earth had a climate. And for this we are called deniers. Because we asked for the due diligence of a Royal Commission into climate change, we were accused of causing further delay in the saving of humanity and the rescuing of the planet. To delay is to deny, we were told, menacingly. Now, of course, it seems, since ClimateGate emails and the Copenhagen debacle, the whole world is in denial, at least for the Greens, except for the Greens. Delay and denial is almost the new black. So let's do the due diligence now, while we've got the time, with the temperatures stable and the urgency gone, and a 2 or 3 year delay from the Labor Party if they were in government. Let's check out the costs and that we citizens will be forced to pay and have a Royal Commission into global warming and climate change as a basis for a real decision, not 155 people gathered from bus stops. I believe the green alarmists of the world need to prove their case first. They want to change everything, they should tell us why. They haven't bothered the people with details, they treat us all like mushrooms. We are supposed to accept a bland global consensus from the United Nations as if it's gospel. I believe the obligation is on the green alarmists to convince ordinary Australians with facts and not spin that there is a real danger of runaway and irreversible global warming, and that humans are causing this danger before we are forced to dismantle our vibrant and productive Australian low-cost economy. In Victoria, for the House of Representatives, I urge you, after careful consideration, to vote as you would normally do. However, for the Senate, I believe we, the people, need to send a very clear message to Canberra. We don't want to weaken or destroy our economy without having the empirical science on the table for all to see. This message needs to hit Green, Labor and Liberal parliamentarians equally, because none so far are committed to doing any due diligence on climate change. We really need to demand this of all parties. Only a Royal Commission can now do the due diligence properly. We ask you and your friends, for simplicity, to vote above the line on the Senate ballot paper for the Climate Sceptics Party. On behalf of the Climate Sceptics Party, I would like to thank you all for watching our Senate campaign launch for the Victoria, and I urge you to send this YouTube link to your friends.